And so we were in Israel, and my brother Jackson, he's always wanted to ride on a camel's hump. And so he walks up to the man who's offering rides on the camel's hump, and he requests/asks, "Sir, may I ride on the camel's hump?" And the gentleman says, "If you go get me one of those pomegranate juices, I will let you ride on the camel's hump." So Jackson, my brother, goes and he uses my mother's money to purchase this man a pomegranate juice so he can now ride on the camel's hump. And quite frankly, that's the story of how Jackson rode on the camel's hump. I'm sure there's a camel and the needle of an eye of a haystack joke somewhere in there. But I'm just going to say it. It ain't nothing to him, man. It's nothing to him. But anyway, it's been so long since I've seen your face. Let me ask you this question. How have you been doing these past 7 days?
I have been doing good. I worked Monday through Thursday instead of Monday through Friday. Took off Friday because my good buddy Josiah Poole was getting married. He got married yesterday on Saturday. I was in the wedding, so went up Friday and took part in the rehearsal dinner and all the festivities, between the rehearsal dinner and the wedding itself. So that was kind of the main deal this week, was us traveling up to North Georgia, with an 8-month-old. I was not looking forward to the travels, just because he's so young. And there's so much stuff that comes with such a tiny human, just requires so many pieces of luggage, and it's unbelievable. But I feel like as soon as we got to the airport at SRQ on Friday morning, it was like, I don't know, 5:30, 6 o'clock we got there. Something flipped in my brain, and it was straight dad mode from there on. I got like 2 pieces of luggage, something on my back, and we're going. We're getting it checked. We're getting on the plane, and we're doing this thing. So, but yeah, everything went really smoothly there and back. Honestly, on the plane, he slept probably 70% of both flights, and then like kind of quietly played, on his own. I mean, in Molly's lap, but on his own, just minding his own business. So it was great that he was able to really be the adult in the situation. But I did want to mention that on my trip over, I sat next to a man named Alan. And now Alan he's from Boston. He was going up to Boston for a wedding, his cousin's wedding, but he lives in Sarasota. And we got to talking, and I'm not a big talker on flights, but before he even took off, he was talking to me. So, we started kind of going back and forth. He's a pickleballer. He used to play semi-professional tennis. And so he's like, yeah, now I play pickleball in my community. And he's like, all my friends always ask me to play in tournaments with them because, I'm better than they are, and we always win, essentially. But he's retired, and he makes music. He's enclosing his lanai to be a recording studio. I'm like, bro, I got to get you on this podcast. It was such a pleasure just getting to know Alan a little bit better. And really just one of those guys, when you're talking to him, it's just a gentle, warm soul, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I won't say that was the highlight. The wedding festivities was probably the highlight, but it was just so great to make a connection like that first thing in the morning, on a flight. So that was Alan, and he's a prince of a man. And yeah, after that, just did the rehearsal dinner, stayed in the Airbnb with other groomsmen. We kind of chummed it up the night before and, the day before the wedding and everything like that, as you do before weddings. But yeah, it was a great time just being able to see people from Milton and Gainesville that I hadn't seen in a while. Just a blessing to get to catch up with all those guys. So, but how about you? I kind of rambled there, but it was such a good time. So.
Well, before I jump into my week, my friend, I have 3 questions for you.
Oh.
Number one, does Alan know about the Quite Frankly podcast?
I told him about the podcast. However, Alan, how can I describe Alan? He's an old soul. He's kind of stuck in the 70s, I would say.
Sure.
And I mentioned the podcast, but I don't really know if he
knew what a podcast was.
Right. He knew what it was, but I don't think he would, if you gave him a phone and said, find a podcast called Quite Frankly, I don't know if he'd be able to actually get to it.
I understand.
But no, he was great though. So,
well, I can't wait until he's on this show. Maybe he'll be able to figure out our software before he can figure out how to find a Quite Regular podcast. But that's awesome. Second question. What was the outfit like for the rehearsal dinner? Because I know, as we all know, weddings, the groomsmen, they tend to wear the same thing. Mm-hmm. But the rehearsal dinner is where the groomsmen really get to shine and show their true proverbial colors. So what kind of proverbial colors were you rocking with?
Right. So I texted Josiah before. I said, let me know what everybody's wearing, to this rehearsal, because I don't want to be underdressed. You never want to be underdressed. It's okay to be over a little bit, but never under. And he said, look, my mom said, Sunday's best. And he threw around some other fashion verbiage that I don't really understand, but I said, look, Sunday's best. I'm breaking out a turtleneck and a dang black chore jacket. And yes. Honestly, I walked in the room and I had black skinny jeans on and Chelsea boots. It's kind of my classic Christmas outfit, but it's just so dang wavy that I was like, I could pull this off for this rehearsal dinner. And I feel like whenever we walked in the room, I feel like we turned a lot of heads. A lot of people were probably just looking at Molly like, hey, Molly's here. We're excited to see her. I would like to think, they were looking at my neck and being like, dang, that boy's neck is warm, huh?
Reach for that neck, get turned into an example.
That's right. But I got probably 4 or 5 comments that night about the turtleneck and how people said, man, I'm so glad you wore that. I don't think I could pull it off. But, I think that's a great compliment. And I appreciate all those people telling me that.
I'll tell you, it takes a special kind of man to pull off a beautiful turtleneck in the October weather. But it must have been a turtleneck night.
It was indeed a turtleneck night, but we were looking at the weather and the lows were in the 40s. So I was like, oh, it's going to be chilly. We're in North Georgia. It's like mountains, and the rehearsal dinner started at 6 and, like the lows actually hit like 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning.
Mm.
So we pull up with jackets, turtleneck. It's like 65 degrees outside. It was a warm experience. But I said, look, when you're in the mountains and it's October, wear a turtleneck, Nobody knows
right.
what
Beauty
you feel
is
on
pain.
the inside. Yeah, that's right.
I love it. Well, my third question, have I asked my third question yet?
I don't think so.
This is my third question. What kind of festivities went down the pre-wedding with the groomsmen? And of course, only share what contributes to human flourishing.
Okay. No, I would say everything that we did pre-wedding contributed to human flourishing.
Praise God.
Yeah. So the night before the Airbnb we stayed in, there was like a game room, and I was the last one to get there because, believe it or not, I forgot my tux at our Airbnb, which unfortunately was about 45 minutes away. So Jesse Dieterle and Matt Godwin, they were kind enough to drive to my Airbnb with me to get my tux and drive back. So, an extra hour and a half in the car, but we got some good quality time with each other. But yeah, there was a game room. I slept in the game room because there's a pull-out couch. There's a massive TV with a PlayStation. There was foosball, a little basketball arcade type game. It was unbelievable. So we stayed up, played some games, chatted. When you haven't seen all these people in so long, it's one of my favorite things is just catching up with people. Because, at one point in your life, you knew so much about them. And now you come back after like a year and a half and you haven't seen them. So, but yeah. And then that day of the wedding, the groomsmen dressing room, I guess, had like a pool table in it. Josiah's family had arranged for a platter of Chick-fil-A chicken nuggets and fries. And so it was just a blessing overall. Playing pool and eating chicken nuggets. We were squirting Chick-fil-A sauce into each other's mouths, like loaded with fries and nuggets, and just take a hit of that junk. And it was a fun time. Our fingers were really greasy that night, though.
I love that for you. That does sound like a lot of fun. I appreciate you answering those questions. That's such great detail. I feel like our listeners now know so much about your week and your festivities and your 45-minute to 1.5 hour drive.
That's
and
right.
I will share a brief shout out to Jay Dirty and Matt Godwin. I received a text message from Matt Godwin last week that said, "I see you on the side of the road."
Oh wow!
And I'm not gonna explain what I was doing on the side of the road, but it contributed to human flourishing as well. But yeah, awesome week. I will share
yours?
about my week. Yeah.
Yours was probably just as entertaining as mine. I'm sure.
Mine is much less eventful. It started off. Well, we won't say started off, but on Tuesday we have life group. So I got the privilege of teaching this week and taught Acts 9. Now you may be thinking, what is Acts 9 about? And before I share that with you, I'm going to share with you that I was supposed to be teaching on Acts 8, and I completely glossed over Acts 8 because I thought we had already taught on it. And so I taught on Acts 9, and we did not teach on Acts 8. So we're coming back, for our listeners, we're coming back this week and to teach on Acts 8. But Acts 9 was good, and I think it'll set up the story and make Acts 8 more meaningful because we now know the result of it. But we see Saul's conversion to Christianity, basically. And then we see Peter healing some people, one specific woman named Dorcas, Dorcas. She's also called Tabitha, but in the Aramaic, that translates to gazelle. So I called her Gazelle because I think that's a better name.
That is great. And honestly, Dorcas, whenever we have another kiddo coming around, if it's a girl, I think Dorcas is going to be top of the list now.
I mean, if you look at Dorcas's life, she was healed from death to life. And what better way to bring in a human into this world than with that example as a story to share with everybody who interacts with her? Just proverbial food for thought. Anyway, I've started to try to do my 6-mile walk every single day now.
Wow.
Though I developed a bit of a blister on my left heel on the outer side of it. So I've been thinking about what to do with that, but every time I walk, it just pops and it takes care of itself. So, we continue on, baby. Finally, this is the last thing I will share about my week. Is, as we know, and as we began the Quite Frankly podcast, I was wrapping up my stint in the local physical therapist office, treating a sprained ankle. And I'm here to share with you, Brett Walters, and our loyal and faithful listeners, that I have returned to basketball action.
Off the
and
IR.
Here's what that looks like. I've returned off the IR. It's been quite a depressing few past months, missing out on that hardwood court. But whenever I stepped out on there, the glory days hit me. It reminded me of when I could, sorry, I'm getting a little emotional thinking about my time on the courts. I'm just going to stop there because I won't be able to get what I was going to say out without shedding a tear and choking
breaking
out.
down.
Yeah. So, but that does launch us into our sports segment. What have you been seeing sports-wise?
Well, I've been watching baseball, but before we get to baseball, I would like to tell you about a sponsor for our podcast that's not yet a sponsor, but for your heel that's blistered. Have you ever used moleskin?
I can't say I have. In fact, that phrase frightens me.
Don't be frightened. It's like an adhesive that you put on your skin, and it's really soft, and it's almost got like a fur on the outside so that your sock kind of glides on it and doesn't get, because if you use a Band-Aid, it can just peel off so easily from the repetitious movement of walking.
Of course.
But moleskin's great. I've mentioned my mom's part of the running community, so she's dealt with a blister or two. And she uses moleskin. I mean, moleskin's holding it together, for a lot of people. So you need to try it out because it's really good stuff.
It sounds wonderful. It sounds a bit like a turtleneck for your heel, almost.
It kind of is. And I can neither confirm nor deny if it's actually made from moles, but if it was, it'd be probably from the belly, like the soft underbelly, if I was guessing.
Of course. It's nice to pet their underbellies.
That's right. But yeah, I've been watching baseball a little bit. Friday, during the rehearsal dinner, I'm talking with old pal Tim Snow, and he had the game up on his phone, naturally. It's the top of the 9th inning, Rangers versus Astros, and the Rangers are up by 2. Okay? None other than Jose Altuve comes to the plate with 2 runners on. Guess what? It is now the Astros ahead by 1 with one swing of the bat. This man who is, I mean, safe to say probably the smallest, MLB player maybe of all time with that dang electric bat. And he put him up in the top of the 9th, and of course the Rangers in classic Ranger style, didn't have an answer for it. So they came out so strong. And honestly, they're both in the AL West, so I don't really like either one. But I'd rather the Rangers win than the Astros, just since the whole cheating scandal a few years ago. But man, it's just looking like a classic Texas team. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. We commented on the Oklahoma-Texas game, and it's got the feeling of a part 2 right here. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. It seems as if every single Texas team that I enjoy watching blows. They blow leads like no other. They're professionals at it. It's quite pitiful. But I will say they are, at this moment, on track to win the game. This game tonight, Sunday night, that they are playing. It's 4-2 in the top of the 8th. Now, if we know anything about this last game, that doesn't mean anything. But we'll see, I guess.
I mean, 2 runs. They've proven that 2 runs is clearly not enough insurance. So hopefully they can hold on. But yeah, that's really all the sports news I have. Is yet again another Texas team is blowing leads out here. So
yeah, I mean, I respect your reporting skills. Those Texas teams, they are needed to keep up with. But let me ask you this. Have you heard about the world's first floating skate park?
I don't think so. Is it the little inflatable things that go along with the waves, or is it an actual skate park?
Oh, it's an actual skate park.
I have not seen that.
Well, I guess I don't know what the floating things are, but the way you described it, does not sound like it will be that.
What I'm thinking of is just like a long strip of like floating, I don't know, it's almost like a dock, but when the big waves come, they just go up and down, oscillate with the waves, I think they use them in the surfing community, and you can kind of run and jump off onto a big wave. That way you don't have to sit in the water, get your leg eaten by a shark, things like that.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So no. Here they actually shot up an hot air balloon into the sky, 2,000 feet in the air, with a skate park attached to the hot air balloon. Yeah, for our listeners only, Brett is making this face of confusion, just like last week.
I was going to say, for the second week in a row, confusion. Whenever I think floating on water, not, Up, the movie.
No. This was UP, Up. So Chris Kyle, this BMX guy, was 2,000 feet in the air doing tricks on a skate park attached to a hot air balloon. And it was just crazy. So that's my reporting news. I would never do that. Well, I won't say never. My inkling, if you will, is to not do that. It is far dangerous than my taste, and I'm not a BMX guy, and I've never skated at a skate park. So if I did have a bucket list and those 3 things were on it, then it'd be the perfect event for me to do. But quite frankly, those 3 things are not in it. And quite frankly, I do not have a bucket list. So that's my life for you.
I was about to say, if I can't stay on a skateboard for more than, 2 seconds on flat ground, the last thing I'm going to do is take a skate park, which is even more difficult, and float it up 1,000 feet in the air. 2,000 feet, sorry. Didn't mean to disrespect Mr. Chris Kyle.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with the American Sniper. I think his name was also Chris Kyle.
Yes, I did look into this. However, Chris Kyle BMX guy is Kriss, Chris, which is a Chris that I've never heard spelled like that.
That's a California Chris, is what that sounds like.
California with a K.
Oh, man. That's good stuff. Well, that's like you always bring the most incredible sports news. We go from the hamster wheel to the floating skate park. I'm always on the edge of my seat whenever the sports section comes up. Here I am just doing boring reporting on Rangers blowing leads. Everyone knows it's going to happen. So, but I do want to talk about a sponsor other than Moleskine. So, many people have asked me where I get my cool pants. For years, I told them Walmart. But now, because of our newest sponsor, I can tell them The Garden. The Garden pants are made to last. They come fully starched, so every morning I get back after evading the police at 5 a.m. with my trusty headlamp. I can jump right in them and head on to work. With The Garden, you're sure to never run into the proverbial pesky weeds that brands like Levi, Langler, and Bugo Haas sell you. Those are three very famous designer jean companies. You can buy the Garden pant today by visiting flobo.com to secure your 15% discount. And I use these every single morning. I go for my walk. I don't shower, so I'm super sweaty. I jump in my extra starch pants, and away I run. So,
Well, I believe the extra starch prevents the stench.
Yep.
From after you don't shower.
And you're able to
I'm guessing. Yeah, you run through the mud to get away from the police, so you're a little muddy. But due to the starchness and the Garden, it doesn't show. It kind of protects the mud.
Yeah, I mean, it's an excellent product, and you can wear them many, many times without having to wash them, so you're saving energy, you're saving water. That's what the Garden's all about, sustainability, reducing our footprint. Really just a great brand all around,
I do know. Yeah, I would highly recommend. We did receive a comment, and it's because we just started this brand new podcast called the Quite Frankly Podcast. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, like you mentioned last week, we're going to have to cancel the other Quite Frankly Podcast, but luckily our listeners are listening to the new Quite Frankly Podcast as they listen or watch right now. And so James Gary writes this: really excited for the new podcast, but I will miss the original. And before I comment, do you have any comments, any statements?
Well, I know James, he's a faithful listener, and I also am incredibly sad about our old podcast. But this new podcast, which this is actually the first episode of, kind of transitioning from Quite Frankly to the Quite Frankly Podcast. It's an exciting, refreshing start. I mentioned it to Alan on the flight. I said, look, we were doing a podcast called Quite Frankly, where we covered our lives, sports, a little reality television. I said, unfortunately, we had to stop that. But we are, this upcoming week, starting a new podcast called Quite Frankly that covers what happened in our previous week, sports, reality television, stuff like that. So he seemed really excited about the fresh start.
I actually think it's going to be good for our branding. As many of our listeners know, we've been denied multiple times by Nespresso.
I don't think we talked about that. Was that this past week?
This past week.
It feels like
Nespresso has officially denied us.
It was an absolute dagger. I was sitting there at work, and I just checked my personal email, and I see Nespresso pop up. Oh, okay. the big dogs at Nespresso have finally come to a decision on us. I open the email. It's a dang kick to the begonias, you know.
Yeah, you want to talk about a righteous bean boiling? That one got my beans absolutely boiled. My, oh my. I began to tear up as I was sitting at my desk. However, with this new branding, we can approach them once more and see if they might change their answer.
They 1,000% think we're like Russian bots or something like that. Like, are we about to get like hacked?
Oh man. Well, yeah, I'm with you. I agree with everything you said. It's gonna be good. I'm excited, but I'm sympathetic for James as well, and I'm with him. I'm empathetic as well. You know, which is another great conversation. The difference between sympathy and empathy. You know, empathy would be feeling with. Sympathy would be feeling for. If I have that correctly. And I am both sympathetic and empathetic to James Gary.
Well, look, I use them interchangeably, so I really couldn't tell you the difference. And even whenever you gave the definition there, I still don't really understand it. So I'll have to do a little bit of research, and we'll have that discussion next week because I'm really not prepared for it right now.
We'll tell Rodrigo to mark this down on our list of things to discuss for next week in 7 days on episode 2 of the Quite Frankly podcast.
Right.
Let's think. Southern Charm, just for a minute here. Another 7 days passes, another Quite Frankly podcast shows up, and another Southern Charm episode drops. And this one would whirlwind be an understatement?
I think whirlwind emotionally just I don't know if exhausting is the right word, but emotionally taxing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like you said, another week, like the sun comes up, the world spins, and Southern Charm's putting out incredible content. Yeah, I mean, we go from the dinner party where everyone's screaming at each other to everyone on the whole cast kind of finding out that Olivia's brother had passed away. And so it was really kind of cool to see everybody put everything aside and kind of come to her aid in that moment.
Yes, a great sense of unity in that moment of tragedy. And you always have to walk the proverbial tightrope when it comes to that kind of stuff. Because it can be, I would say you should obliterate the tightrope, because I think it puts in perspective what exactly you're walking on. The tightrope being this tension between these friends. With a tight rope, you have the tension and the rope, and the death in Olivia's family just absolutely obliterates it and puts that rope, the tightrope, into perspective. So I thought that was a cool, I won't say cool, I mean, it was a sweet thing, but yeah, albeit sad circumstances, but maybe necessary circumstances in order to bring unity and restoration in some of those relationships. I don't know. I can't imagine losing a brother unexpectedly.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, I mean, it was crazy. I don't know how he passed, but it was pretty rough. But it was, like I said, it was cool to see everybody kind of come to her side. Like Austin, they were just really at each other's necks or throats. I don't know if that's how the saying goes. I think it's throats. but he kind of prepared a gift basket for her because he knows what she's going through, because he also lost a sibling when he was, I think, in high school maybe. So they kind of share that strange and sad bond. But one thing that was a little bit lighter on the episode was Craig trying to make dinner. Did you see this? The man is an absolute sociopath. I'll let you explain what your take on it, on what you saw.
Well, here's what I remember. He was opening a beverage. Is this what we're talking about?
Well, yeah, and the tomato can after.
I missed the tomato can. I missed the tomato can. But I did see that he opened a beverage that required a cork to be removed. And he pushed the cork in the bottle, if I remember correctly. And then he tried to pour it out. And it got everywhere. I think glasses broke. But I don't know. I don't remember the tomato thing.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of the same situation as the cork, right? He was like screwing it in, and then instead of, using it correctly, he just tried to yank it out. And just end up, he's just like chipping away cork just little by little. And his buddy who's there is just like, what are you doing? Have you ever opened one of these before? And then he's cooking dinner, and he's got a can opener with a can of tomatoes, and he's got it on upside down or backwards or something, and he's sitting there just wrenching on this can opener, and it's just mangling the outside of this can. Like, there's tomato juice going everywhere. It was a nice change of pace because it was a heavy episode, but that particular moment was pretty hilarious.
Yes. We've said it from the beginning. Craig is an absolute delight. And I think Craig and Paige are good together. You think that same thing. But let me ask you this. We saw something that I don't remember seeing, and that is Madison and Paige are best friends. Did we see this coming?
I didn't see it coming. Because Madison's got that, I don't know. She's got got
that dog in her.
She's got that dog in her, yeah. I'm great with like a southern accent, a deep southern accent. Hers, there's just something about it. I don't know what it is. But Paige obviously is from New York, so you got these like polar opposites here, really, with personality and dialect as well. But I guess, it works, Paige is pouring out like bottled lemonade into a pitcher to make it look like she's made it. She's got like Publix pastries that she's putting out on a platter. It's just, I don't know. It's like the classic Southern thing would be, oh, let me make lemonade from scratch. Let me make some pastries from scratch. She comes down from New York and is like, let's buy everything from Publix, put it on a platter so that it looks like it's made. But look, I think she admitted it up front, which I could appreciate.
Oh, yeah. And New Yorkers, they work smarter, not harder. No need to go through all the trouble of making your own lemonade when you can just fake it,
Right.
But that's good. Anything else you've been seeing reality television-wise?
No, Beverly Hills, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills is coming out on Wednesday, I believe, the 25th. So that is, it'll be good. I'm excited. They've got a new cast member that's coming on, and there's supposed to be some new drama. So this cast has been together for quite a while, and it's one of the, I think, premier Real Housewife franchises, if you will.
That's good. I'm excited. And that gives us a back-to-back release day because Winter House is releasing on Tuesday at October 24th. But let me ask you this question, if you'll allow me. Are you struggling with a phone addiction? Do you find yourself automatically checking your phone anytime you have a free moment or when there's a lull in a conversation? Now introducing Blinded by the Light, an easy-to-install application that curbs your proclivity to constantly check your phone. With Blinded by the Light, you can preset a total screen time allowance every day. But if your time is up, the screen on your phone shines bright white. This light is specially designed to damage your retina if looked at too long. Not to mention, every second that this light is activated, 20% of your phone battery is drained. If there's an emergency situation while your phone is locked down, simply befriend a nearby stranger or run to the authorities for help. My eyes are currently still recovering from my insubordination last week, but I'd say I learned my lesson. Use code quite frankly to get 15% off your subscription today. I'm surprised I could read that. I'll be honest. This application has been one of the most life-changing, just under the life-changing death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. This application has helped me live more like the Lord. Because quite frankly, if we know anything about Jesus, we know that he existed as in flesh in the time where there were no cell phones and no screens from which to look at in the form of a cell phone. Now, is that an argument to be made that we should abolish phones? I don't think so. But what it is to be made is, are we using our phones to look more like the Lord? Oftentimes, obviously for myself, the answer is absolutely not. Hence why I need the Blinded by the Light. Yeah, I'll tell you, it does change your life.
That's a good word. And I know you set the preset on your phone, and you have someone else who has the password that can change, your accessibilities and how long you can have your screen on and stuff. And I know that you work a lot with media, with your phone and things like that, so this is probably a difficult thing. But I guess from the end of the advertisement there, it sounds like you were, trying to stretch it a little further than you should have. And I hope your eyes are doing okay, but I think you did learn your lesson there.
I most certainly did. I will say one of my favorite things about this product is that when you do say you are in an emergency and your phone's locked down, I love the fact that it requires you to do human interaction. Because what is more urgent than talking to another person versus looking at your phone, So if we react with the same sense of urgency to get to know our neighbor, get to know your neighbor, as we do with the same sense of urgency to check our email to see if Nespresso has reached back out, then we would be doing something right. But unfortunately, so often we are caught doing the wrong thing. And once again, I cannot recommend Blinded by the Light enough to you, our listeners. So if you have an opportunity to get your hands on it, would recommend.
Yeah, for sure. And I think with me, I've never used the product, but I'll have to install it here after this with a 15% discount. But it's like with Alan on the plane, I could have popped my earbuds in and Alan could have said something to me and I could have acted like I didn't even hear him. And then me and Alan don't have this connection anymore, But instead, if your phone's locked down and maybe the pilot eats the fish or something like that and, he's not feeling well, he's down for the count, how are we going to call for help? I'm going to get with Alan and we're going to figure this thing out together. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So like you said, I think it's great when there's an emergency, you can either physically run, which we know is a great thing for your exercise, or, talk to a stranger and say, hey man, I need help. I got to land this plane. So.
Yeah, it's crucial. And that sense of vulnerability when you are willing to share with the person you don't know that you need help. Ooh, that creates a bond like no other.
For sure.
Well, what's one song you've been listening to that really spoke to you this week?
Well, this week, as I mentioned, I was up in the mountains a little bit, and nothing goes better in the mountains than a little bit of banjo. And I know Jackson was having a little bit of difficulty with knowing the different sounds of a banjo and I think between a banjo and a fiddle, which are, that's another discussion, but a banjo is critical when you're in the mountains. And so the song Roadrunner by Vincent Neil Emerson is an absolute classic. It really spoke to me because he's talking about always being on the road, always traveling. It's really upbeat. And I did a lot of traveling this week, and I think it just fits in really well with kind of the vibe that I was going with this weekend.
That is wonderful. And I do love a good, I don't know what's it called. I'll call it an alternative instrument, one that you don't hear all the time. You know, you have your normal guitars and pianos, but when you bring in something like a banjo or a saxophone, that's just kind of gets you in the mood to do a little dancey dance, if you know what I'm saying.
That's right.
And one of those types of songs I came across this week, and it's actually just released on Wednesday. And here's a fun story. It was supposed to release on Monday. However, technical difficulties, if you'll imagine that, moved it to Wednesday. So if you're on listening to this on Monday, you are going to hear this song less than 1 week after it released. And it's going to be, in all the music industry's prediction, it's going to be a chart topper, higher than Taylor Swift, even.
Wow.
I believe they call it the Billboard's Top 100. It will be number 1 on the Billboard's Top 100. So get on top of it while you can, and so you can be a first listener. It's called, get ready for this, Orange Blossom by Gold Ford. Gold Ford, Goldford. Now, I have not heard Gold Ford's music before. I heard Orange Blossom. But you want to talk about a song that just hits in all the right spots. I would say Orange Blossom is up there. I believe there's a line that says, "It smells like orange blossoms in the air tonight." It might not say that. I don't recall precisely. But luckily, with our handy dandy, quite frankly, podcast SOTW collection playlist, you'll be able to listen to this as soon as possible.
Well, that's a great word. I'll get with our team after this and we'll have them add it immediately. I know you like to jump, strike while the iron's hot, so to speak, especially when a new song's just come out. So we'll go ahead and add this to the playlist. And look, I think we should get some kickbacks for helping them get to number 1 on the Billboard. Personally,
That's right.
I only need like 4% of what they're making. It's not too much to ask.
No.
Really, you should probably get that since you're the one that, put the song out there. But we're a team. Okay.
Let's be clear about something. There is nothing that I do that you don't do, right? Everything I do for the sake of this podcast, you do as well. We are one. and that goes for our listeners as well. We represent our listeners. Our listeners represent us, and we work together to create life that can flourish. Yeah. So anything we receive, our listeners and you get in return. And quite frankly, we made a budget this week, and it's not looking good. That's a joke.
I think
we're extremely rich.
The unity that we have, and like you said, me and you, we are one flesh essentially with our listeners. And so when we do something, it represents them, and when they do something, it represents us. So, don't go out there and commit horrendous crimes in the name of quite frankly. I don't think any of you would do that, because you're all, let's get real, you're all terrible, wretched sinners, but you probably wouldn't do something like that, But yeah, I just think we've got such a great community here, and it's just a blessing, really.
I will amen to that. You couldn't have said that more beautifully. As we head on and leave for the week, do you have any final words?
I don't think so. I would just say, kind of piggybacking off of what I just said, go out there, spread the word of the podcast. More importantly, spread the good news of Jesus Christ. But also, you could throw the podcast in with that gospel conversation if you so choose. So
that's beautiful strategy. Yeah, and truthfully, if you point them to the podcast, they're going to hear the gospel. But I will say, this has been one of the great moments of my week. And every single time we gather together, I am just uplifted. Physically, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. All of those, the four critical points in my life are raised to a level that they have not hit before. So that's a continual process of growth in my life, and I'm thankful for the work that you're doing, the faithfulness of our listeners, and just like always, we love you deeply, and we love you oh so generously, and we will see you in 7 days.